Heilige Tanya, the Shar Yuchd Ve'emuna, and it has to be said, there's an unbelievable unfolding right now of Mashiach-dike consciousness. Yidden from all over the world, Jews unifying. Doesn't matter right, left, doing mitzvahs, koshering kitchens in Tel Aviv, 30,000 pairs of tzitzis being tied for soldiers, tens of thousands and thousands of pairs that people want mitzvahs. They want to be connected to mitzvahs. Food packaging, beyond, tefillahs, prayers, religious, non-religious, this kippah, no kippah, nothing, doesn't make a difference. Just prayers of peace. Just prayers, so many prayers of peace. Crying out, Avinu Malkeinu, Hashem, please, tear up whatever decrees in heaven are happening and bring peace. Unbelievable, just love and support. Just want to see the end of all the fighting and all the violence. It's a very, very powerful thing now that, and people are taking upon religious practice like they never did. So Hashem is like pushing this. But you know what? Wouldn't it be good if we just take this message? We don't want to have that stress and strain and war and horror and terror bring us to that. That we should be running towards kosher and chabas and tefillah and learning and beitam l'chaveroi, doing for our fellow. We don't need to be pushed towards it, but you see it, it's unfolding. It's mamish unfolding. That we should do it now. We should do it now. This is the message. Take this now. I was speaking to somebody right now in Teaneck. He said he's never seen so much unity in the Jewish community there. Like all of the differences are gone, like that. Right, left, nothing makes a difference anymore. We're just old, young, everyone's they just want to help and contribute and do. It's very, very important, is that everyone's involved. And if we can unify, this is it, and Klal Yisrael unifies, we're going to bring blessing, open blessing to the whole world. Open goodness. So we're in the Shar Yuchd Ve'emuna. This is unbelievable stuff. We said, Udvar Hashem, Le'olam Hashem devarcha nitza b'shamayim. Hashem, your words are standing up to the heavens. Now look down to the middle of the page. V'chein kol abruim shebekol ha'olamas elyonim v'sachtoinim. All creations, yes, spiritual worlds also have creation. What do you mean? But they're spiritual. Yeah, they're spiritual creations. Creations mean finiteness. Are your thoughts finite? Of course they are. They're this thought and not that thought. So you could understand how you could have this thing, it's less finite than this stender, but my thoughts are still finite. They're just less finite. And therefore go up into the world of angels, into all the worlds of angels. All of those worlds are created worlds, and they're all being mehave and mechaye. They're all being created and being imbued with spiritual life through the oisius of Torah, through the letters of Torah. God speaking them into creation. This is what it means, and God speaks and creation happens. Let there be light, let there be. Okay? Afilu eretz halazu hagashmius subechinas doimim mamish. Even in this stender, even in a rock. What's a rock in Hebrew? An Evan. So an Evan is the letters Aleph, Beis, Nun. And there's a reason why it's those letters. An Evan is like Av and Ben, has both the letters of a father and a son in it. What those letters, there's a lot going on in an Evan. When those letters are together in that combination, it makes a rock. That's the way that God is creating rocks. The Hebrew letters formulate the reality, okay? Elohayim istalkus mimenu kurega chas v'shalom ha'oisius me'asara ma'amoros. And if those letters would depart for even a second. Now look what he said here. From the 10 ma'amaros, shebehen nivras ha'aretz b'sheishis u'me'bereshis. God created the world with 10 utterances. There's 10 let there be's. The first one is bereshis, it's called the Maimer Sosam, the hidden Maimer. God is saying, let there be, let there be, let there be. Through those 10 ma'amaros, the combination of those letters create the entire world. Now we're going to see, well, those 10 utterances don't have all the words in the world in them. Right? Doesn't have all the words in the world. Does it have the word stender? Does it have the word 8? A pen? What about a pill? An elephant? You saw it in there? So it doesn't have those words, so where are all of creation? Where are all the words coming from? The world is created through the 10 utterances. So you might think that only those things can exist. But the world has there's a lot of creation. Varied creation. So where do those things come from? We're going to get to that in a moment. So if Hashem took the energy from the 10 utterances of creation away, then chayzris la'ayin ve'efes mamish k'may lifnei sheishis u'me'bereshis mamish. If God at any moment took away the energy of the creating, of Him saying the 10 let there be's, at that moment all those things would go back to nothingness. Chabad is a famous mashal that they use of a guy who whips a stone up in the air. So how long will the stone fly up in the air? As long as there's the kinetic force, it's called, the kinetic energy that's pushing it, meaning, however strong you are, the amount and torque that you throw up the stone, as long as that energy is pushing it up, it will continue to go. But what happens the second that kinetic energy runs out? The second it runs out, it's going to just naturally come back down, right? Which means the only thing that's keeping the rock flying in the air is the constant propel of the kinetic energy. There has to be an acting force. You get it? If there wasn't a constant acting force on the stone, it would just go down. Only because of this constant force pushing the stone up, up, is it going up. But as soon as that force stops, as soon as there's not active energy pushing the stone, the natural state of the stone will be just to fall down. Says Chabad, the natural state of existence is that it shouldn't exist. It's only that God, so to speak, is putting constant energy into creation, constant kinetic energy, called the 10 ma'amaros, shenivra olam, only because the 10 ma'amaros, that Hashem is constantly putting energy, speaking, which we spoke about last time, is the revelation from Hashem to share with existence. Only because God is emanating that energy is the world continuing to exist. But at any moment, if He removed the kinetic energy, what would happen? The natural state would be the world would just go back to nothingness. Which, if you really think about this, is a very deep thing, because it means that it's not like God made the world and then left to a cocktail party. God is constantly making, which means, I like to always say, God is constantly interested with the world. He's interested in this project. He's constantly giving it life. And to make it more intimate, He's constantly interested in you. Because if you're alive, it means He's constantly putting energy into the project called you. He wants you to exist. He's interested in your existence, and He believes in your existence to do great things in the world. So He's constantly putting energy, kinetic energy, into you. And the kinetic energy is the form of the 22 Hebrew letters. Okay? Questions? Yes.
So when you, let's say, change the form of something, like you take tree or wood or whatever it is, and like you turn it, let's say, into a table or into, I don't know, paper, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Are you like partnering with God and like changing like the voice?
Yeah, mamish. At a certain point, you could change the letters around. That's you're a partner with Hashem. That's what the tzaddikim are doing. Is they're doing all sorts of tzirufim with letters, mixing around the letters and creating universes.
Wait, what?
Like Rabbi Yankov told me that when one time he was sitting by the Rebbe, by Rabbi Chimayer, and Chimayer was by the Shabbos table, and he was just like sitting there smiling, like, you know, enjoying seemingly the ambiance of his Shabbos table with 100 people in the house. So one of the Chassidim said, you know, what's going on? Or maybe Yankel, you asked. Yankel asked to one of the Chassidim, like, what's going on? And the answer was?
The Rebbe is building, he's using the osios from everybody's conversation in Yiddish, from like 100 different people, taking all of those letters and building palaces for the Shekhinah.
Meaning he's taking all the letters that are being spoken of all the different conversations, and he's taking those letters and he's arranging them as he sees fit to create palaces for the divine presence to come into the world, based on the neshamas of those in the room around him. Because the things that you speak about are relevant to you. The things that you're speaking about are emanating from your thoughts, which are influenced by your pre-psychic consciousness, your soul. And the Rebbe also, oftentimes, is that let's say somebody's not exactly talking about the best things. So what can he do? Well, as long as you take the letters and move them around, you can help fix people's letters. For example, the most famous example of this is something from the Sefer Yetzirah. The Sefer Yetzirah is all about this, is taking letters and moving them around, which we're going to get to something a bit crazy from Sefer Yetzirah, is that, how do you spell a very, very horrible word? It doesn't even mean leprosy, it means something way worse. It's called nega. Nega means like an evil, evil virus and disease. So you spell it nun, gimel, ayin, nega. Nega tsaras. The nega ra. The Zohar says the nega ra is the most evil, evil energy in the world. Nega. It's like, we don't even like to say the word. But the same very letters, a nun, a gimel, an ayin, if you move them around, it spells ayin, nun, gimel. Oneg. The greatest pleasure. Oneg Shabbos, the pleasure of Shabbos. The delight of Shabbos. So the same letters is the most evil energy, but you just got to move them around. And you could readjust creation because of that. What do you think the tzaddikim are doing here? They're rearranging letters all the time to try to help fix people and fix souls. And there's a lot going on. Once you realize the fabric of creation is letters and speech, okay? Now you might say, like, how do I do that? Like, I didn't learn that yet in, essentials, foundations, advanced. We'll get there. The Balatanya is going to guide us step by step, okay? Yeah, clarification?
I was just wondering, is that how, I've heard about people, they say, it's still a bad thing, you see people breaking Shabbos on certain occasions. Do people build themselves up to a certain point where, they
there is such a thing.
Rearrange the letters?
There is such a thing, but that's only the job at tzaddikim, is that they can handle it and whatever. It's not, the Baal Shem said, it's not a good sign. If you see somebody breaking Shabbos, it means that inside of you, there's something in you that's breaking Shabbos.
So the people who wouldn't...
That's correct. If you see somebody breaking Shabbos, it means inside of you, there's something that's also breaking Shabbos.
In what way?
Maybe you're not treating Shabbos the way that it should. You're breaking it in some of its kedusha, some of its holiness. You're not taking it as serious as possible. Maybe you didn't realize that you were doing boirer on a certain thing, and you were taking out socks, the ones that you don't want to wear on Shabbos, to get to the ones that you do want to wear, whatever. There's all sorts of details of Shabbos.
What if you live in a house where nobody does Shabbos except for you? So you see them all breaking Shabbos.
So, hear the Baal Shem Tov's words well. If you see somebody breaking Shabbos, it means there's some part of you that's breaking Shabbos. And therefore, if you're observing that, there needs to be some examination on myself of what's going on in my own Shabbos. I don't mean that you're like, I'm a Shomer Shabbos Jew, like Baruch Hashem. I mean, keeping Shabbos is very detailed. It means it should sober me up. There's probably something going on that I still need to work on. Shabbos observance takes a lifetime to really master. And the tzaddikim that keep Shabbos are still learning about Shabbos. And they really keep Shabbos. There were certain tzaddikim that if they ever saw a car on Shabbos, many of them never even saw the car drive on Shabbos, but the car that they would see, they would say Mazel Tov. Because it must be that the only reason that they're in a car is because the woman's having a baby in the car. And therefore it's a mitzvah to take her to the hospital on Shabbos and drive the car. So they knew, and it was. Meaning they wouldn't see a car driving on Shabbos. You get what I'm saying? Or God forbid it was somebody who had to go to the hospital for another reason. And therefore it's a mitzvah to get into the car, chai behem, and go to the hospital. Yeah, Yeshua.
So we're like going through a concept in Masechtas like this that and it like talks about like different levels of what kind of bedding you can use for the base of your sukkah, like the straw, and it talks about mevatling it. So the Rabbanim hold that the highest level of mevatling it is by like verbally saying like I'm mevatel this. So is there like,
not just thinking it, to verbally say it.
To verbally say it. So I was like talking about somebody and I was kind of curious if we were like on the ball with it or not. Is that like because Hashem uttered the world into existence, the actual verbalization of the mevatling is what makes it a reality.
Verbalizing something brings it much more down into reality. It takes it from the spiritual worlds and brings it much more into reality. And actions are the strongest. When a person does an action, hamoichiach, he shows something with action. That's very, very powerful. Thought, speech, and action. Those are the three levushim. Okay. V'zeh she'amar Ari, and this is what the Arizal teaches us. Shegam b'doimim mamish, kamoy avonim ve'afar u'mayim, even in mamish, mineral life. Right? There's doimim, soimeach, chai medaber. There's mineral life, soimeach, plant life, which is more animated. There's chaye, which is animals, which is even more animated. When you look into a horse's eyes, there's more going on there than a leaf of mint. You see in the horse's eyes, there's something going on. And then even within Chai, there's different dargas. I remember swimming with the dolphins. There's something going on with dolphins. They know. They know more than just like, a chipmunk. You know. You see the dolphins they're like with you. They're like protect. They don't want to get too close because maybe it'll scare you. But they get close enough to let you know, like, we got you. We're protecting you. There's a whole thing going on with dolphins.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, dolphins are very, very interesting. Dolphins are... So they're very high level of chaye, but they're not medaber. They're not the level of consciousness of medaber, of a human being, the consciousness of a human being. Human beings can build... We could build a palace for a king. We can also destroy, God forbid. So with each stage, what the Arizal is teaching us, I would understand maybe there's godly consciousness in like the higher levels of creation. But in a bunch of earth, some soil, in a rock, and just like a piece of like carbon, just a charred piece of wood, there's also godliness, says the Arizal. Kamay avonim va'afar u'mayim yesh bechinas nefesh v'chiyas ruchanis. Inside of rocks is godly energy. Even a soul, a nefesh. Not ruach and neshama, but a nefesh. A nefesh. Inside of, this is all Rabbi Nachman's Torah Aleph. The seichel shebachol davar. Rabbi Nachman goes even further. It says that there's real consciousness in everything. And you're going to start picking up on that consciousness. That's why tzaddikim would be walking in the woods and they sit down on a certain log. They start saying mishnayos. Because that there was souls trapped in all sorts of things. Things get, in the world of Kabbalah, just read Shivchei Ari. Read all the books about what the Arizal was doing. Shivchei Ari in English, it's called The Life of the Arizal, I think. It's a blue book. And you just get the daily life of what the Ari was doing in Sfas. He was finding souls in all sorts of things and items. And Elokus. And things that were trapped. Because once you really understand that God is creating everything through godly consciousness, so that it's everywhere. Don't get lost in the external of it. You have to go deeper into the consciousness of it. So the Arizal is opening this up for us. And what is in there? What is the rock doing? That from Hashem's 10 utterances of let there be, he's constantly speaking, which we said is revelation, the specific revelation, that's what speech is, specific revelation and will of creation, that is formulating through the 22 Hebrew letters, all creation, and that is then being dressed or cloaked in the physical thing itself. But what's actually giving the rock existence? The letters Aleph, Beis, and Nun. And if for 1 second Hashem stops saying Evin, then the rock would cease to be. You only see a rock because there's Hebrew letters there. Rav Chaim Miller said it beautifully. He said, language is reality and existence. Language is reality. Existence is convention. Language is reality. Existence in convention is convention. The universe only happens to exist because Hashem utters specific words and letters. Language is the reality. What you see as existence is just a convention because there's speech that's being said. But if the speech was stopped to be said, then the convention would go away. Okay? Now you start realizing that when it says that we're made in the image of God, we were given the Ruach Memalala. When Hashem blew into us the living soul, the Yipach Ba'ap of Nishmas Chaim, what made us unique? What does the Targum Onkelos say? What does it mean the living soul is blown into us? Ruach Memalala, a soul of speech, of using words and language. It's very powerful. That means that we have godly powers. That God creates through speech, and we create through speech. So be careful what you speak about. Hainu b'chinas is labshus oisius hadibra me'asora ma'amoras ha'mechayis u'mahavas es hadoimim li'os yesh ma'ayin. The fact that Hashem is speaking Evan is creating stone out of nothing. Yesh ma'ayin ve'efesh shelifnei sheishis nemei bereishis. If Hashem would remove the language, then the stone would cease to exist. Tomorrow, just because the nature of the times will also do something tomorrow, we're going to speak about, even though that Evan is not mentioned in the creation of the world, so where do we get those letters from? We're going to learn something called the Rala Sha'arim, the 231 gate wheel, where, so to speak, we're going to learn about this Kabbalistic wheel that turns, and all sorts of letters start corresponding to other letters. Okay, if you're in Sfat, you probably saw some painting, with this, the Rala Sha'arim. Okay? And this Rala Sha'arim, the 231 gate wheel, is the way that God takes all the Hebrew letters and all the Hebrew words from the 10 utterances that Hashem created the world from, and starts ticking the Rala Sha'arim, that it could correspond with other letters in order to create all of existence, including Yiddish, including everything. You just have to move the gate and the wheel around, and all creation will ensue. And that's how you can get down to every facet of creation, is you're moving the 10 utterances within this wheel. Okay, more about this wheel tomorrow. Amen. Call to.